We are living in an era of discount souls, an era where necessity has cannibalized value, and desperation has learned to wear the mask of humility. From the moment you entered the social workforce, you have been conditioned to commoditize yourself. You were taught to offer your services, to lower your prices, to remain competitive, to beg for attention, and to plead for an opportunity. You have been indoctrinated with the slave morality that believes abundance is earned through servitude. But you need to understand something fundamental, something Niccolo Machiavelli understood centuries ago. Money does not obey the needy. Money obeys those who impose their own value. Capital, much like power, is not a charitable energy. It does not respond to supplication. It responds to scarcity. When you make yourself expensive, you are not just raising a price tag, you are elevating your energetic presence. And that shift changes the entire neurochemistry of the interaction. The masses run after what seems unreachable, not what is given without resistance. This is the scarcity heuristic hardwired into the human brain. We instinctively assign higher value to resources that appear limited or difficult to obtain. Therefore, this is not a discussion about how to make money in the traditional sense. This is a psychological deconstruction of how to become the kind of entity before whom money bows. The secret is not in the pursuit. It is in reversing the polarity so that you become the pursued. The modern world is constructed on a dangerous lie, a cognitive distortion that keeps the machinery running. The belief that the one who works the hardest is worth the most. Society has convinced you, through a relentless feedback loop of reinforcement, that your effort has an objectively measurable price. They tell you that reward is waiting at the end of an endless chain of sacrifices. This is the just world hypothesis, the fallacy that the world is fair and labor equals outcome. It is a lie. Those who dominate the game never sacrifice themselves. They engineer systems where others sacrifice for them. They do not seek validation, they seek position. Because the individual who understands the psychology of becoming expensive knows that respect is never negotiated, it is imposed. When you become expensive, money ceases to be a goal and becomes a byproduct of your state of being. People who live their lives begging for opportunities do not understand this law. They operate under the delusion that price is dictated by the market. In reality, the market obeys perception. Value is not objective. It is entirely psychological. From a neurological standpoint, there is no difference between an artist who charges $10 and one who charges $10,000, except for one critical variable, the anchor. One offered himself to the world, the other made himself scarce, and scarcity creates power. Money is biologically attracted to what is limited, to what is gated. The man who gives himself away becomes common, and in the human cortex, common is filtered out as background noise. The man who restricts access becomes a dopamine trigger. He becomes desired. This is why those who master the art of power do not seek to be loved. They seek to be required. Their presence is not within reach of the masses. Their attention is not something you can beg for. People pay to access their time, their words, and even their silence. You must understand that expensive is not always measured in currency. It is measured in energy, in focus, and in mystery. When you internalize this, the economy begins to tilt in your favor. The wealthy are not afraid of appearing unreachable. In fact, they cultivate that distance with surgical precision. They do not respond immediately. They do not show themselves as accessible. They are not always available. This is not because they are arrogant. It is because they understand the neuroscience of value. Value is constructed during the wait. The person who is always available loses weight in the minds of others. This is a basic principle of social psychology. Availability breeds familiarity, and familiarity breeds contempt. Absence, when it is measured and strategic, multiplies demand. People do not respect what they fully understand. They respect what they cannot quite grasp, what they cannot fully control. That is the foundation of Machiavellian power. Money is a servant that only recognizes a master when the master behaves as such. If you act like a slave, anxious, available, desperate to please money, will treat you like a slave. It will give you just enough to survive, but never enough to be free. If you behave like an owner, money will seek you out as if you were its destiny. This is an uncomfortable truth for the majority, because it demands something the masses refuse to assume: discipline, rigid boundaries, and a dangerous dose of pride. Making yourself expensive does not mean despising others. It means mastering the instinct to beg. It means choosing when, how, and with whom you deliver your energy. It means rejecting what does not resonate with your purpose, even if it looks like a good opportunity. Most people fail because they accept crumbs just to avoid losing nothing. They are paralyzed by loss aversion. But the one who understands the value of silence, of withdrawal, of controlled scarcity, ends up becoming magnetic. They call it luck, but it is strategy. It is the manipulation of the halo effect, where your high value in one area, your self-respect, bleeds over into how people perceive your competence and worth in every other area. Money, like human attention, moves according to the law of contrast. It chases what escapes. It desires what moves away. It surrenders to the one who does not need it. When you need something desperately, you emit a frequency of lack. You scare it away. But when you know you are sufficient, when you behave like an asset, money feels the urgency to earn your attention, not the other way around. That is the investment that few understand. The man who makes himself expensive transforms every interaction into a test of power. He does not speak too much. He does not explain his decisions. He does not seek approval. He lets silence do the heavy lifting. Every word he speaks weighs something. Every action seems calculated. In a world where everyone is screaming to be heard, triggering a sensory overload in the marketplace, the one who speaks little becomes a mystery. And in the economy of attention, mystery is gold. Look around you. The great names, the most powerful personal brands, the most respected individuals, they all share this trait. They made themselves scarce. They do not publish everything they do. They do not reveal every step. They do not expose their entire lives to the public eye. They understand that value is destroyed when it is shown in excess. Constant exposure turns luxury into routine. Therefore, if you want capital to obey you, you must stop chasing it and start starving the market of your presence. But do not misunderstand the mechanics of this move. Making yourself expensive is not about hiding. It is not retraction born of fear. It is withdrawal born of strategy. There is a profound psychological difference between the recluse who hides because he feels unworthy and the strategist who withdraws to increase his potential energy. It is about giving less, but with significantly higher intensity. It is about presenting yourself as an entity that has something immense to offer, but not to just anyone. Every appearance you make must be an event. Every word must be an invitation to desire. This is how men of power build fortunes without frantic movement. They convert their mere presence into a user experience. Money moves like a wild animal. It has an instinct. It smells the cortisol of your fear. It detects the micro-expressions of need, and it recoils from those who pursue it with desperation. If you feel anxiety about possessing it, it escapes you. This is the ironic process theory. The more you suppress the fear of poverty, the more you manifest the behavior that ensures it. But if you project calm, dominion, and emotional regulation, money approaches, because money, like any living creature, obeys the strongest energy in the room. The man who is hungry loses control. The man who is fed retains dominion. True wealth begins in your behavior, in your neuro-linguistic programming, not in your bank account. Power does not consist of possessing. It consists of imposing a perception. You can be financially broken, but if you act with the mentality of someone who does not need, the social hierarchy will shift. Others will begin to treat you as if you possess a secret asset, something they lack. And when that cognitive shift occurs in the minds of others, money flows toward you, almost by inertia. Money does not seek logic. It seeks magnetism. And magnetism is born from self-valuation. Nobody pays for what they do not believe has value. This is the fundamental rule of commerce and human relationships. Therefore, if you do not believe in your own price point, the world will mirror that disbelief. If you accept mediocre work, unfair deals, or relationships that deplete your dopamine reserves, you are screaming to the universe that your value is negotiable. And in the laws of power, anything that is negotiable loses respect. Making yourself expensive implies being willing to be uncomfortable. It implies sacrificing the immediate dopamine hit of a quick sale to gain the long-term compound interest of reputation. It implies letting people call you arrogant, distant, or difficult. Let them use those labels. Those are the words the herd uses to describe those who have separated themselves from the flock. When you make yourself expensive, you begin to understand that money is not earned by increasing volume, working more hours, taking more clients. It is earned by making yourself indispensable, and indispensability is not manufactured through quantity. It is manufactured through quality and scarcity. What is abundant is cheap. What is rare is expensive. This is the supply and demand curve applied to the human soul. Therefore, the path is not to produce more, but to refine more. Your word, your time, your attention, everything must have a cost. The man who does not charge for his energy is wasting it. And here enters the true Machiavellian strategy, a concept known in sociology as the principle of least interest. The person who is least interested in continuing the relationship holds the most power. You must learn to feign disinterest to generate desire. The powerful master this technique. They know exactly when to show themselves and when to vanish. They know how to dose their presence so that the world develops a dependency on them. They never give everything. They never reveal the full formula. They never show their full hand of cards, because mystery generates demand, and demand generates wealth. The art of making yourself expensive is the art of mastering the psychology of desire. It is not about being inaccessible. That is a childish tactic. It is about being selective. It is about choosing the correct context to appear in, the exact amount of information to offer, and the precise silence required to leave the other party hungry. Power lives in that equilibrium. Respect hides in that tension. Money is not controlled with effort. It is controlled with aura. It is controlled with the energy you emanate when you know who you are and what you are worth. You do not need to shout it. You only need to embody it. Every time you accept less than you deserve, you are stealing power from your future self. Every time you refuse to lower your standards, you multiply that power. And that, over time, translates into real, tangible assets. Because the world does not reward the one who tries the hardest. It rewards the one who positions himself best. The mediocre believe that success is a matter of luck or random variance. The astute understand it is a matter of perception management. You do not need more resources. You need to learn to use yourself better. You need to project yourself as something that cannot simply be bought, but must be conquered. Consequently, when you start this process of making yourself expensive, you will notice a phenomenon. Many people will walk away. The clients who needed you cheap, the friends who needed you available, the partners who needed you submissive, they will stop calling. Perfect. Do not panic. This is not a loss. It is a purge. It is the signal that your value is beginning to rise. The initial void is the filter. And when you learn to withstand the silence of that void without caving in, money and high-level opportunities will come on their own. Not because the world changed, but because your energy changed. Making yourself expensive is, in the end, a radical act of faith in oneself. It is looking in the mirror and deciding that your time is worth more than someone else's urgency. It is understanding that abundance is not born of accumulation, but of position. Because when you occupy the correct mental real estate, money has no choice but to obey. Being expensive is a silent war against everything the system wants from you. We live in a culture that educates you to please, to say yes, to avoid causing discomfort. This is the agreeableness trait in the Big Five personality model, and society conditions you to maximize it. From a young age, you are taught to be useful, serviceable, cooperative, accessible, but nobody tells you that these virtues, when they lack boundaries, become chains. The man who seeks to be liked by everyone ends up serving everyone, and he who serves everyone governs no one. That is the first trap of money. making you believe that recognition precedes respect. No. First, they respect you. Then, they pay you. When you decide to make yourself expensive, the system will punish you. They will call you arrogant, distant, egocentric. They will do this because they can no longer utilize you. They confuse obedience with humility and independence with pride. But Machiavelli explained this with brutal clarity. He who depends on the approval of the people is a slave to their inconsistency. If you make yourself valuable from the inside, rooted in your own criteria, your own self-efficacy, then there is no crowd that can reduce you to a commodity. The man who possesses interior power negotiates from silence. Being expensive does not simply mean raising your prices or charging more fiat currency. It is a mentality, a mode of existence. It means ceasing to be available at all hours. It means ceasing to accept projects that do not align with your identity. It means stopping the hemorrhage of your energy toward those who do not know how to value it. It means setting boundaries even when it hurts, even when your amygdala is screaming that you might be rejected. It means looking into the eyes of necessity and telling it, you will wait. Because value is not demonstrated with desperation. It is demonstrated with patience. Every time you refuse to sell yourself for less, the universe takes notes. This is not a metaphor. It is a feedback loop. What you project in your actions molds how others perceive you through their mirror neurons. If you present yourself as someone who does not need approval, people begin to approve of you without you asking. If you behave like someone who does not run after money, money begins to walk toward you. This reversal of roles is what separates the masters from the servants. Money does not measure the quantity of labor. It measures the level of influence. And influence is not obtained by talking a lot. It is obtained by acting with coherence. Men who make themselves expensive do not explain their decisions. They do not justify their prices, nor their distance, nor their silence. They know that explanation is the language of the weak. The powerful do not explain. They impose. And imposition is not violence. It is presence. If you want money to obey you, stop behaving like someone who needs it and start behaving like someone who deserves it. Do not work for money. Work for position. Money follows the one who rises, not the one who runs. Money is a shadow. It only appears when you walk toward the light. When you understand this, your relationship with the world changes completely. You no longer feel the urgency to convince anyone. This is the death of the hard sell. You no longer seek to demonstrate your value. You simply embody it. People notice the difference. They start to ask themselves, what does he have? What is he doing? Why doesn't he get upset? And there, right there, the magic begins. Curiosity turns into attraction, and attraction turns into influence. The most common error of the aspiring wealthy is believing they need to be visible all the time. This is the mere exposure effect gone wrong. You do not need to be seen. You need to be remembered. Excess exposure turns you into background scenery, and nobody pays a premium for what they are accustomed to seeing. That is why the powerful show themselves little not out of fear, but out of strategy. They know that absence creates an echo, and the echo creates value. The man who disappears at the right moment leaves his shadow in the minds of others, and that is power. Making yourself expensive also implies knowing when to be silent in business, in relationships, in life. Silence, when mastered, is worth more than 1,000 arguments. Most people speak out of nervousness, not necessity. But calculated silence is a mirror. It forces the other person to fill the void with their own anxiety. And in any negotiation, the one who shows anxiety first loses. Money, like attention, surrenders to the one who asks for it the least. The art of making yourself expensive is an equilibrium between austerity and grandeur. You do not need to show off what you have. You need to make people feel what you are worth. There are those who wear luxury brands and yet smell of desperation. And there are those who wear simplicity, yet project authority. That authority cannot be bought. It is cultivated. It is forged in the discipline of refusing to act from fear. When the world perceives you as someone who does not need, it starts offering you everything. Because value attracts through contrast. Those who dominate power know this. They do not seek acceptance. They seek demand, and demand is built by denying access. The human brain desires what it cannot have. Dopamine spikes in anticipation of the reward, not the reward itself. Money works the same way. Therefore, when you make yourself expensive, the environment reorganizes itself. The same people who ignored you before begin to observe you. The same people who underestimated you start wanting to associate with you. Respect arrives when access becomes costly, because distance generates desire, and desire opens wallets. But be careful. Making yourself expensive is not isolating yourself from the world. It is filtering it. You must remain present, but with gates. It is not about locking yourself away. It is about raising the entry cost to your life. Your time, your attention, and your energy are the most valuable products in existence. If you give them away, you are left empty. If you sell them well, you build power. Money is not a scarce resource. It is an energy that seeks direction, and it follows leadership. The one who makes himself expensive becomes that direction. Opportunities align, the right people appear, deals flow, not because the universe is mystical, but because you are broadcasting a clear signal. I am not just anyone. That frequency filters out the mediocre and attracts the valuable. Machiavelli understood that power is born of perception, and perception is molded by behavior. That is why his philosophy was not moral, it was strategic. The one who makes himself expensive does not seek to be good, he seeks to be respected. He does not need to be loved, he needs to be feared for his absence. Because the fear of losing you generates more value than the promise of having you. Deep down, everything reduces to a psychological principle. People pay for what costs them something. This is the sunk cost fallacy working in your favor. If something is obtained easily, it is discarded quickly. If something demands effort, it is valued more. Therefore, if you want to be paid more, you do not need to justify it with a PowerPoint presentation. You only need to make it harder to obtain. This is the essence of luxury, of prestige, of power, restricted access. Think of the most expensive brands in the world. They do not sell products, they sell identity. They do not sell you a garment, they sell you the sensation of belonging to an elite. You do not buy a watch, you buy what the watch says about you. You must build your personal value in this exact way, not by selling what you do, but by selling what you represent. When your name is associated with authority, the price ceases to matter. This is price inelasticity applied to the individual. Making yourself expensive is playing the long game. You are not seeking immediate results. You are seeking permanent position. Quick money gives you pleasure. Sustained value gives you power. And power is the only thing money respects. That is why the wise do not compete. They select. They do not accept every deal. They do not answer every message. They do not attend to every voice. Every no they pronounce sharpens their value. The masses live obsessed with being chosen. The wise live obsessed with choosing. That difference marks destiny. Because he who chooses controls, and he who begs submits. Making yourself expensive is recovering that control. It is ceasing to be an option to become a privilege. When others feel that accessing you is an honor, money will flow without resistance. In a world where everyone wants attention, the truly expensive commodity is calm, the tranquility of not needing to prove anything. The silence of the one who no longer seeks to convince. That serenity is magnetic because the chaos of the entire world revolves around it. When you manage to project it, money feels attracted like iron to a magnet. It does not understand why. It simply responds. Being expensive is not an act of vanity. It is an act of self-respect. It is recognizing that your time has a price that not everyone can pay. It is recognizing that your energy is not at the service of what depletes you, but of what elevates you. And that abundance, in the end, is not having more. It is permitting less. Learn this. Money is not the cause of power. It is its reflection. Therefore, never try to force it. Master yourself, and it will follow you. And if one day you doubt your value, remember that even the silence of a king costs more than the voice of 1,000 beggars. So stop begging. Stop insisting. Stop seeking validation. Make yourself expensive not in arrogance, but in consciousness. Not so the world admires you, but so it knows you exist with purpose. Because he who makes himself expensive does not flee the world, he forces it to pay for his access. Making yourself expensive is not an economic strategy. It is a philosophy of life. It is the silent rebellion of the individual against emotional consumption and mental slavery. The current world does not need more talented people. It needs people who know their value, because talent without boundaries becomes servitude, and the one who does not put a price on his presence ends up paying with his soul. You were taught to think that saying yes opens doors, but nobody told you that the door that opens fastest is also the easiest to close. Respect is not born of free access. It is born of distance. Distance creates rarity, and rarity creates desire. That is why the one who makes himself expensive does not live in hiding. He shows himself, but sparingly. He appears when his presence has weight, not when others demand it. Machiavelli said that power is not begged for. It is manufactured. Respect is not asked for. It is provoked. Money is not sought. It is attracted. And all these things are achieved in the same way. By controlling perception, the human mind does not value abundance. It values what it feels it might lose. Loss aversion is a stronger motivator than potential gain. Therefore, the secret is not to give more, but to give less with more intention. Excess availability is the natural enemy of value. Every time you say yes to what does not add to you, you say no to your greatness. Every time you accept less than you are worth, you are declaring mental poverty. The one who makes himself expensive understands that he is his own sword. He does not apologize for protecting his energy. He does not explain why he is absent. He does not justify his price, because explanation is an act of weakness in front of someone who does not yet understand the value of silence. Money is not an end. It is a messenger, and the message it carries is always the same. This goes where there is order. Money does not flow toward chaos nor toward anxiety. It flows toward structure, calm, and coherence. Making yourself expensive is creating that order within you. It is telling the world with your behavior that you are not available for everything. That not just anyone can buy your attention, your time, or your effort. Deep down, all millionaires of mindset know this. They do not accumulate money because they chase it, but because their energy is not sold cheaply. Value is born of the filter. The more selective you are, the more expensive you become. And the more expensive you become, the more the world reorders itself to pay you what you demand. But there is an obstacle that destroys this process. Guilt. The guilt of charging what you are worth, of saying no, of maintaining your distance. We were educated to feel guilt when choosing ourselves, to believe that taking care of yourself is selfishness, that establishing boundaries is rejection, that silence is coldness. That is the trap. They want you to give yourself entirely so they can use you without resistance. They want you to feel bad for valuing yourself. When guilt disappears, respect is born. When you give yourself permission to be selective, people begin to see you with different eyes. It is not that you become better. It is that you become scarcer. And scarcity psychologically activates the deepest desire of the human being: conquest. Nobody desires what they have secured. All desire is born from the risk of losing. That is why the man who makes himself expensive becomes a conquest, and money loves to conquer. Money has a memory. It remembers how you treat it. If you use it as a tool, it obeys you. If you worship it, it destroys you. And if you chase it, it flees. It is a symbolic relationship. When you make yourself expensive, you demonstrate to money that you do not need it to validate you. And then it, like a confused servant, runs to serve you because energy always submits to whoever does not depend on it. Common people spend their whole lives learning to earn money, but they never learn to make themselves worthy of it. And dignity does not come from labor. It comes from behavior. There are those who work 14 hours a day and still do not inspire respect. And there are those who speak little, appear little, but their sole presence elevates the value of everything they touch. That is the man money seeks. In the court of power, attention is the most valuable currency. If you give it away, you become predictable. If you dose it, you become magnetic. The leaders, the strategists, those who direct financial or mental empires understand this rule. Power is not shown, it is insinuated. The less is known about you, the more is spoken about you. And in that noise, authority is born. Your reputation is not built by doing more. It is built by doing less, but with significantly more weight. Every appearance must be an event. Every word, a declaration. Every silence, a lesson. This is how those who control capital operate. They do not move fast. They move with purpose. Every action is a calculated investment in their image, and their image is, fundamentally, their true asset. Money obeys perception. This is the perceived value theory. If you behave like someone who needs permission to exist, no one will take you seriously. But if you behave like someone who knows their presence is a privilege, people will pay just to be in your orbit. It is a simple psychological phenomenon. Value is projected. Nobody grants it to you. You impose it. Machiavelli would have called it the art of dominating without appearing to dominate. The art of controlling without touching. When you make yourself expensive, people begin to adjust their behavior around you. They consult you before acting. They seek your approval. They wait for your response, not because you hold formal power, but because your energy transmits leadership. And money always follows the leader, not the servant. But making yourself expensive requires discipline. It requires learning to tolerate the discomfort of the void. Because when you raise your value, the noise disappears. Not everyone calls you anymore. Not everyone seeks you out. Not everyone applauds you. Solitude becomes your filter. Many confuse this with failure, when in reality, it is the first signal of ascent. The solitude of the valuable is the anteroom of dominion. Society trains the masses to need company, validation, and constant sensory input. But those who build empires understand that silence is not absence. It is calibration. Silence is the place where value is redefined, where you decide who stays and who goes. Making yourself expensive implies mastering that space without fear. It means learning not to react immediately, letting others reveal their intentions before you show yours. The world belongs to the one who knows how to wait, to the one who does not act on impulse, but on strategy. The man who makes himself expensive knows that time is his ally. Every minute that passes without him lowering himself multiplies his value. Every time he says no, he filters out those unwilling to pay his price. And every time he filters, he climbs one level higher in the invisible hierarchy of respect. The masses fear losing opportunities. This is FOMO, fear of missing out, driving their decisions. The wise fear losing dignity. That difference separates the poor from the powerful, because money, in essence, seeks structure. It is not interested in emotion or urgency. It is interested in security, and security is projected through boundaries, not through availability. When you learn to project power, your language changes. Your words become slower, more precise. Your gaze stops seeking approval. Your energy stops vibrating in a frequency of need. It is a subtle but devastating change. People cannot explain it. They only feel it. There is something distinct about you, and that something is the aura of value. Nobody can fake value for long. The market detects it. People smell it. Therefore, making yourself expensive is not about acting. It is about being. It is not about pretending to be rich. It is about thinking with the mentality of someone who does not need to run after anything. That mental stability is worth more than any fortune. Money obeys the stable mind. If you think from scarcity, you multiply scarcity. If you think from abundance, you project magnetism. But if you think from authority, from the knowledge that you are the origin of all value, money ceases to be a topic. It becomes an inevitable reflection of who you are. When you make yourself expensive, you discover that true luxury is not what you buy, but what you do not need. Luxury is choosing, not accumulating. Power is deciding what to ignore. And respect is staying silent when others seek a fight. Each of these decisions reinforces your image of control. And control, in the human mind, is synonymous with value. Therefore, The path to wealth does not begin in the bank account. It begins in the neurocircuitry of the brain. Money is a psychological consequence. It is the world's response to the signal you emit. If you behave like a product, you will be consumed. If you behave like a brand, you will be sought after. But if you behave like an authority, you will be followed. That is the difference between the one who works for money and the one whom money seeks. The wise do not compete in the market of noise. They create their own. They do not beg for attention. They direct it. They do not seek clients. They select allies. They do not wait for validation. They generate it with their presence. This is the mentality that makes money obey. The mentality of one who no longer asks, but dictates. And when you reach that point, the entire world reorders itself. The same people who used to ask for discounts now pay double for your time. The same people who didn't believe in you now seek your counsel. The same doors that seemed closed open without being touched. Because reality obeys perception, and perception obeys the value you project. Being expensive is not an economic act. It is a spiritual act. It is recognizing yourself as a source of abundance. It is understanding that you do not need to prove your value to anyone, because what you are already justifies everything. When that truth installs itself in your mind, money ceases to be a mystery. It becomes an exact reflection of your self-perception. There is a moment in the life of the astute man where he stops chasing results and starts building structure. He stops thinking in the short term and starts designing a legacy. That moment marks his true transition. He stops being a player and becomes the board. Money is no longer the end. It is the tool to maintain the order of his world. When you reach that level, you no longer work for money, but with money. You use it as a prince uses his army, with strategy, with distance, with power. You do not despair to earn it. You make it serve you. And this inversion of power occurs because you learn to make yourself expensive, to stop being a resource and become a symbol. A symbol is worth more than an object. The expensive man no longer sells hours. He sells vision. He no longer offers services. He offers identity. He no longer charges for what he does, but for what he represents. And that transition is the peak of Machiavellian power, converting your name into a synonym for value. When you achieve that, you no longer compete. Competition is the game of those who still seek validation. Dominion is the terrain of those who made themselves scarce. You do not compete with anyone because no one can replace you. You are a complete, self-sufficient system with your own rules. And money, which hates uncertainty, takes refuge in you because it perceives stability. Making yourself expensive is, therefore, the most altruistic act you can do for yourself. It forces you to grow, to refine yourself, to eliminate the mediocre. It forces you to leave behind the need for approval and to build a character that inspires respect even in silence. There is no wealth without character. There is no fortune without boundaries. There is no respect without distance. The cheap man seeks company. The expensive man seeks purpose. The first measures his success by acceptance, the second by control. And control is the basis of freedom. Freedom does not consist of doing whatever you want. It consists of not depending on anything to do it. And that, in the end, is what everyone seeks without knowing it. Independence. Making yourself expensive is the most direct path toward that independence. Because when your value depends on no one, your destiny depends on no one either. When you no longer need to convince, your word becomes a decree. When you no longer chase, the world starts to spin to your rhythm. And when that happens, money ceases to be a master and becomes a servant. That is the point to which you must aspire. That your calm is worth more than the noise of 1,000 men. That your word moves more than the plea of a multitude. That your presence weighs more than any coin. Because respect, once conquered, becomes a force that nothing can buy. Making yourself expensive, then, is not a luxury. It is an obligation. The obligation of one who has understood that abundance is not inherited, it is imposed. That money is not won, it is attracted. And that power is not asked for, it is embodied. From that instant, your life stops revolving around money and starts revolving around you. And money, faithful to its nature, will obey.